Okay, all right. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Wayne County. We are a diverse congregation that welcomes you as you are, regardless of your age, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, economic status, or physical ability. We come together to seek deeper meaning and understanding from each other and the world around us. Your presence here today is a gift that brings us closer to that understanding. We are an active community that lives its values beyond the hours of Sunday service, and I would like to call your attention to the following. Shortly after the service today, the minister will welcome any visitors or folks that are new to the congregation to join him in his office for a time to ask questions and simply chat. Today is the last day to sign up for one of our favorite events, Wine and Cheese Conversation, on Friday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. Reservations are required since we assign seats for fun table discussions. There is a sign-up sheet in the lobby. Let's have some fun. If you'd like to find out more about our activities, feel free to ask Karen Skubik, our membership coordinator.
Good morning. All right, it's rainy, I get it. I am the Reverend Walter Clark, the minister here at this congregation. I would like to take this opportunity now to welcome anyone who is visiting us for the first or second time who maybe would like to introduce themselves and hasn't had an opportunity yet to introduce themselves. This is a great way for us to get to know you a little better and to make sure that you do get a cup of coffee after service. Would anybody like to introduce themselves? Did you raise your hand or are you just saying? Yes, both.
I'm Rick Stork, and Connie and I are visiting today. We are looking for fellowship, and we are visitors, but at the same time when I came, I know like half the people here. So I felt very welcome when I showed up.
So you saw people and you didn't decide to walk out when you knew that you knew them already?
Well, I like most of them, so I stayed.
That's good, most of them. So remember, after service, you're welcome to come for coffee afterwards in my office and have a little chat. We can talk about those ones you don't like. Over here.
I am Leslie Meadows. I'm from Akron, my first time here.
I'm Martha Melter. I'm from up the road at Chippewa Lake, and I'm looking for fellowship, and I wanted to visit.
Welcome. Welcome. Anyone else who would like to introduce? Is somebody pointing over here, or is this just people talking amongst themselves? Because I know it's Kristen's over here, so there's always a little trouble. So she does keep things interesting. Over here? Didn't you I got him and I didn't get you. He said your name and I apologize. Connie, right?
Connie Stork, and he already introduced me, but yeah, we're here for fellowship and very interested in everything that we've read about the church.
Thank you, and thank you, Connie, for giving me a chance to give you a chance to speak. Yes, that is right. He should not speak for you, especially in this congregation. Anyone else? Well, once again, I want to remind you, coffee for those who are new and newish after the service in my office. You are welcome to join. I would ask you please to think about signing up for the wine and cheese. I was asked to submit conversation questions, so I came up with the questions. They are not all theological, which is good, but one of them is. Thank you for joining us, for taking time on your Sunday morning to join us for worship.
Our chalice lighting this morning is The Heart of Our Faith by Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together. Let us now rise in body or spirit as we sing our opening hymn, It Sounds Along the Ages. It can be found in the Great Hymnal, number 187.
That was a pick your own journey song this morning. It was lovely. You all did very, very well. Sounded good from here. Good morning. This is the time we're going to share a story together this morning. Y'all ready to share a story with me? They look ready. All right, who would like to join me up here? I brought the Wonder Box in today. Who else would like to come up and join me? Get a little bit closer. Come on. All right. Anybody wants to get a little closer? All right. Thank you. All right. So today's story is going to be about, I'll wait for Sarah, since she's dancing her way up the aisles. Today's story is going to be about love and comfort and change, coziness. We need a little coziness this morning in here. So what sort of things, what do you think might be in our wonder box? What do we wonder if we're talking about love and comfort and cozy and change?
Coffee.
Coffee. What do you think might be in? Wait.
A blanket. A blanket.
Might be a blanket. Anybody else have an idea?
A heart.
A heart. A warm sun. A warm sun. That would be nice if I had brought that. Socks. Okay. All right. Those are all really great wondering ideas. In fact, One of them is something I thought of and ended up not doing, so we have something else. So I think maybe some people could open this Wonder Box together. There's like 4 of you. Just open it together and see what you can find in there. What is it?
A blanket.
It is a blanket. Okay, so
How was I right?
how were you right? Because you wondered, and there it is. Hold it up. Take more than one person to hold it up. There, it's a blanket. Yeah, maybe you just wrap it around yourselves and be cozy and comfortable. Perfect. Oh, let me help you with that.
House.
Well, maybe not a blanket house. We're just going to get cozy for story, okay? Here you go.
Yay.
Ready? Cozy, comfortable, whoever wants it. Okay. That is a blanket that my mother helped me make. I made it for my husband, and she helped me make that many, many years ago. So our story today is about a young person named Nelson. And Nelson was in RE one Sunday, and the adult that was with him, Miss Lila, noticed that they were kind of quiet that day, not their usual boisterous self. And so when they were cleaning up at the end, Miss Lila asked Nelson if everything was okay. Nelson was like, no. I have been dreading this all week, and now it's happening today. My Nana is moving into our house with us today. Miss Lila thought about that a minute and said, I can see that that is a big change and that might make you worried. You know, what worries you about that? Nelson said, well, it'll be me and my daddy and my papa and now my Nana. That's 3 adults. And now I'll just have one more person telling me what to do, and she won't know how we do the things we do in our house. And I'm just not looking forward to it. Lila said to Nelson, I think that those are all reasonable things to be worried about. And I wonder if maybe your Nana might be worried about some things as she is coming to live with you. What do you think his Nana might be worried about when she's moving into their house? Anybody have any ideas?
There's going to be too much people.
Too many people?
Maybe she's sad or embarrassed that she doesn't know what to do in their house.
Sad or embarrassed and she doesn't know what to do in their house. Anybody else have ideas about what Nana might be worried about?
If she has health issues, then like the other people also have to deal with that.
Yeah, that could be.
She's sort of an outsider.
She's an outsider. Mm-hmm. They won't like her food. Those are all legitimate things, and it could be any of those. And so Nelson thought about that a little bit and said, yeah, I can see that. And Miss Lila said, you know what, well, Nelson, I think what would be really important is if you welcomed your grandma into your house. Nelson says, welcome her? She's in my family already. What do you mean, welcome her? Well, because of those things, it might be nice to just say it. So when Nelson went home, he made a card in his room, and it had a picture of a house on it, and then it had his papa and his daddy and him and his Nana all standing in front of the house holding hands. And he wrote on there, welcome, Nana. I'm glad you're here. Love, Nelson. And so he went down the hall to the extra bedroom they had where Nana was putting her things away. And said, Nana, I made you this card. And she looked at it, and he hopped up on the bed, and she was like, oh, thank you, Nelson. That's really special. I really appreciate that. I was thinking that maybe, since I've moved in here, that we could make something together. So Nelson thought that was a great idea. I said, what should we make, Nana? What did you think? And she says, I thought maybe we could crochet a blanket. And he said, I don't know how to crochet. And she said, that's okay, I can teach you how to crochet. He said, can it be green? Because I really want it to be green. And she said, absolutely. So the next day, they went and they picked out all of the shades of green that they liked together. And they spent quite a few days after school sitting together on the sofa, crocheting these squares for their blanket that Nana helped we all put together, and it made a little lap blanket for Nelson. But while they were crocheting, they talked about how their day had been, good things, bad things, what was important to them, all of that. So Nelson loved his blanket. He carried it with him everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And what day he couldn't find his blanket? What do you think happened?
He lost it.
He lost it. I think that may be true. So he lost his blanket, and he was getting ready for bed, and this was going to be a problem. So Daddy and Papa and Nana and Nelson and the cat, everybody was looking for the blanket. Because even the cat.
What?
So,
What?
yes, we've reached a point of contention.
If a cat found a blanket, it would just whip it all up.
Or maybe just curl up and sleep on it. Hawthorne thinks the cat would rip it up, but it could be. Those are all possibilities. All right, so they couldn't find the blanket, and when it was time to go to bed, Nelson was sitting in bed, and he was crying. And Nana came in and sat down and held his hand and said, I know that it's really sad for you that you can't find your blanket and that you've lost it, and I get that. And he said, Nana, it was so special to me because we made it together, and it was so absolutely special. And she said, well, you know what? That is true. And you know what else, Nelson? What was really special to me, the biggest part, was that the time we spent together and we got to know each other better and we shared ideas. That's all that time we spent together and learned more about each other and built relationships. That was what was really important to me. And guess what? We didn't lose those. We didn't lose those. And she said, and Nelson thought about that, and he said, Nana, I love you, and I am glad that you have moved in here. I wasn't sure how it'd work out, but I love you. And he said, can we make another blanket? Yeah. And she said, absolutely. And he said, but I don't want a green one this time. I would like to create one with different colors. Can we do that this time? And she said, absolutely. We can do whatever we want with that blanket because it's just important that we're doing it together. So, what did you want to share, Hawthorne?
They're making a rainbow blanket.
What kind?
A rainbow.
A rainbow blanket. They might be making a rainbow blanket. What was the best part or the most important part about that story for you?
That they made a blanket together, and they got to know more about each other, and
They made a blanket together and they got to know more about each other. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. I really thank you for sharing your stories and your ideas with me this morning. And all of the children in 6th grade and below will be sung out to their exploration classes today. And the youth are staying in the service with you today. I think they have a special spot. They're all sitting together, right? Yeah. So let's sing our song, The Children's Blessing. Thank you.
Our faith is centered on the belief that we can make this world a better place for all who dwell in it. In order to realize that vision, we need both the motivation and the means. Your donation helps the community put its faith into action by supporting our programming and facilities. This morning and throughout the month of January, donations that are not designated for another purpose will be split with a whole community incorporated. The offering will now be collected and gratefully received. Please join me in the unison reading. The words are on the screen. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. Let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
Please join me now in the spirit of meditation, of reflection, of prayer. It feels like we live in such uncertain times. Over the past 2 weeks, we have had mass shootings. We've had the murder of another black man at the hands of police. It seems the world we dream about gets further and further away at times. Breathe and hold on. Hold on to that hope that you have of creating that world you wish to see. Hold on to the ideal that we are the ones who are able to create that global community we dream about. Hold on to the spirit you have to love fiercely in the face of injustice. Hold on to that divine center that is within you and that is within all of us. There has always been trauma. There has always been hate. And there will always be love. And there will always be a chance at redemption. I would like to go over some of the joys and sorrows of our community. We haven't been receiving a lot, and unfortunately, I don't have any sorrows to share today. I have 2 joys. And I love a good joy. I want to first share that Doris Cannon celebrates the birth of their 9th great-grandchild, Salem Alexander Hall, born on the 20th of January. It is always good to see hope made real. It is always wonderful to welcome a new and joyous life. And we also share in Sharon's joy that her mom and her therapy is doing much better and should be returning home in about a month. But perhaps, Sharon, your greatest joy is the support you have received from the community around you. Remember, folks, that you are indeed a joy. I would like for us to take this time now, for those of you who may have joys or sorrows that have been left unsaid, to come up and to take a stone, to hold that joy or sorrow, and place it in the water. And as we do that, we will sing Spirit of Life.
Our reading this morning is an excerpt from See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love by Valerie Kaur. The call to love beyond our own flesh and blood is ancient. It echoes down to us on the lips of indigenous leaders, spiritual teachers, and social reformers through the centuries. Guru Nanak called us to see no stranger, Buddha to practice unending compassion, Abraham to open our tent to all, Jesus to love our neighbors, Muhammad to take in the orphan, Mirabai to love without limit. They all expanded the circle of who counts as one of us, and therefore who is worthy of our care and concern. These teachings were rooted in the linguistic, cultural, and spiritual context of their time, but they spoke of a common vision of our interconnectedness and interdependence. It is the ancient Sanskrit truth that we can look upon anyone or anything and say, Tatvam Asai, I am that. It is the African philosophy, Ubuntu, I am because you are. It is the Mayan precept in Lakesh, you are my other me. What has been an ancient spiritual truth is now increasingly verified by science. We are all invisibly part of one another. We share a common ancestry with everyone and everything alive on earth. The air we breathe contains atoms that have passed through the lungs of ancient ancestors long dead. Our bodies are composed of the same elements created deep inside the furnaces of long dead stars. We can look upon the face of anyone or anything around us and say, as a moral declaration and a spiritual, cosmological, and biological fact, you are a part of me I do not yet know.
So I want you to imagine yourself in a social situation. Maybe you're at the office. Maybe you are having lunch with your friends. Maybe you're catching up with an old acquaintance. And they start talking about their weekend and what they're planning on doing. And they bring up this big event that their church is doing. Let's say it's a yard sale, right? And you happen to say to them, our congregation, our church just did a yard sale not too long ago, and it was so freaking successful. It was absolutely amazing. And your friend goes, I didn't know you went to church. You don't seem like a church type. Where do you go? Oh dear. You know where this conversation's going. I go to the Unitarian Universalist Church. And you know that that is not going to be enough of an answer for your friend, because their next question is, Unitarian Universalist? What's that? How do you answer that? Now, some folks may answer this by giving a statement or a series of statements of what we are not, right? We are non-creedal. We aren't necessarily Christian, and we don't believe in the Bible, but we don't not believe in the Bible. And maybe some will say, well, we have these 7 principles, and they will immediately pull this out of their purse, the 7 principles, and if you don't have it, maybe you'll look them up on your phone and show them to your friend, because how many of you have them memorized? Barb, thank you. Maybe you'll use terms like multi-faith to describe our denomination. Maybe you'll use the term pluralistic. Maybe you'll even say non-denominational. We're a denomination, folks. But In most cases, whatever answer you give, you know there's another question coming up right after it. Okay, so what do you believe? How do you answer that? Everything. We believe in everything. We believe in nothing. We believe that belief is a social construct made to exploit the working class. One of the challenges of our faith, our pluralistic, inquisitive, questioning faith, is that by its nature it is very hard to describe. So much so that the UUA published a curriculum in 2003 called Articulating Your Unitarian Universalist Faith. And it was made to help people answer these questions, and about 20 folks kind of knew I might be going here because they have signed up for my Articulating Your UU class that I am teaching right now. And if I've piqued your interest in this class, the class is full, I'm sorry. I'll be doing it again at some point in time. But what is interesting is that who is in this class runs the gamut from people who are relatively new and still learning about our faith to people who have been a part of our faith community for over a decade. And all of them are genuinely curious on how to answer that question. And all of them have a deep love, if not respect, for our faith. They know how this community makes them feel. They know that there is something beautiful there, but they just can't put the words to it. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, I think the principals do a pretty good job putting words to it. And the principles, you may say, describe our faith. We believe in the principles. That's what we believe in. The principles are good. The principles are good. It is really hard to argue with what the principles are stating, right? It is really hard to argue that we shouldn't strive for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We might not feel it at rush hour traffic, but we know we should strive for it, right? It's really hard to disagree with the idea of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, especially in a world when we hear so much falsehood and lies. Do you know there are congregations who recite the principles every Sunday during their worship service? I know for the fact First Unitarian in Pittsburgh does this, right? And it's a wonderful idea if you think about it. Because the more you get familiar with these things, the more you're reminded about what good behavior can be. It is a promise that we make with these principles. How we aspire to behave with the outside world. Can you imagine what this world would be like if 7 billion people followed the principles? What would this world be like if everyone followed these principles? Oh my God, a whole lot better. Heaven on earth. They are a great guide. They have wonderful things to them. And they are not what we believe. How many of you know the history of the principles? Chris, can you show us the first slide? I've got this, I got to do a TED Talk here. These are the first draft, these are the first adopted principles from the newly minted UUA in 1961, when the Unitarians and the Universalists merged. And I want you to look, I'm about to say the numbers are cut off. How many principles are here? 6, not 7, 6. And how many of you know our first principle? Barb, what's our first principle? The inherent worth and dignity, right? Our first principle here is to strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as the foundation of our religious fellowship. That's not the first principle as we know it. No, the third one here, to affirm, defend, and promote the supreme worth of every human personality, the dignity of man, and the use of the democratic method in human relations. That's closer to what we know as the first principle. All right, what's wrong with that statement? Man. Oh my God. And did you see over here, they've got the word brotherhood in number 4? Oh my gosh. Do you think these principles could pass today? No? How about, which one is it? Number 2. Look at number 2. To cherish and spread universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the what? The what? Judeo-Christian. Would we say that today? Is that in our principles today? No, it is not. Gendered language, Christology, patriarchy, right? And only 6. We're missing one. Do you know when they changed to what they are now? Who knows the year? 84, 85, yes. And do you know what was the driving force behind that change? The women. Give yourself a hand, that's all right. That's all right, yeah. Do you think 40 years ago in 85, when these changes were proposed, were they passed unanimously or not? Yes, they were. Was there fighting before they passed unanimously? Yes, there was. It was not an easy pass. There's an old rule, don't call a vote till you know what the vote is. The UUA was very good about making sure everybody would vote yes before they called that vote, and it took a lot of work. And it took a lot of work. Do you know why we even have the principles? In 1961, we merged the Unitarians and the Universalists. They were not really thrilled about this idea, because what happens when 2 big, powerful groups merge? Who gets to be the dominant one? Who's the leader? They had arguments over whether it was going to be Unitarian Universalists or Universalist Unitarians. I kid you not. And we had a lot of fighting about what the faith should stand for, and they wanted to have a set of principles to go by. And when you have 2 groups who have a lot of differences, your set of commonalities is going to be what? Your lowest common denominator. They found principles that were wide enough to hold both Unitarianism and Universalism. And let me ask you this, the 7 principles we have now, are they wide enough to contain both Unitarianism and Universalism? Yes. I think those principles are wide enough to contain every single theology when practiced well. We don't count the extremists. And that's all the extremists, my friends. We have extremists on both sides of the theological spectrum. But what we have to remember is that these 6 principles are a container of what we believe. The 7 principles we have now are a container of what we believe. They are not the belief itself. And that is a hard distinction to make. So I'm going to try something here. Can we have the next slide, please? Where are my French speakers? What does that say in French? Translate it. This is not a pipe. How many of you are familiar with this image? Okay, you don't count. You don't count either. You're my son. I talked about this at dinner last night. I saw a few people who raised their hand about this. This is, pardon my pronunciation, René Magritte? Is that about right? A surrealist artist. And this is titled, what's the title of this picture? It's not, This Is Not a Pipe. It's The Treachery of Images. What's this a picture of? It's a painting. Technically, it is a JPEG projected onto an LED screen that is embedded into a Google slide. It is not a painting. That's the point that the artist was making. The treachery of an image is we automatically associate the image with what it is projecting and not what it is itself. As Malcolm McLaren would say, the media is the message. But we're not going to go talk about that. The idea is the painting is the container. And he's pointing at what the container is. The message of the painting is the pipe. And it is hard sometimes for us to distinguish because we see that and the first thing we think is pipe, not painting. And it can be hard sometimes to make that distinction. The painting contains the idea of pipe, and in the same way, the principles contain the belief of Unitarian Universalism. They are not what we believe. They are not what our faith is about. Instead, they are an attempt to point us to what our faith truly is. The principles are a way for us to articulate our faith as we have learned through history. And there will be times when we need to re-examine what those words are to use to describe what the center of that faith is, what it is we all hold in common. And are we a faith of people who constantly re-examine ourselves? Yes, it is deep in our DNA. It only makes sense that as the world changes and as we change, the words we use to describe that ineffable center of our faith change as well. As some of you may know, we are in the process of that change as a denomination. In 2020, the UUA started a study commission to examine Article 2 of our national bylaws, which houses our purpose and our principles. And like any good UUA commission, they currently have a 26-page report about their findings over the last 2.5 years that you can find on the UUA website pretty easily. You Google Article 2 UUA, and you can find that PDF of that 26-page report. This year at General Assembly in 2023, there's going to be some discussing about it and discussing maybe amending what their proposal is so far. And in 2024's General Assembly, they will vote whether or not to adopt. Or should I say, we will vote whether or not to adopt. And the Commission recommends changing the 7 principles to 6 values rooted in love. And it wouldn't be a good UUA study without some kitschy little graphic. So we have our next slide with the graphic they have come up with. Can I just give you a personal side about this graphic? I love the idea behind it, but we have enough trouble being called the hippies and moon children, and to have a flower and what this study does is it takes what that center is and tries again to find new words to describe them, the 6 values that all come from love. And the values are justice, interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, and generosity. And I think, again, we can all agree that we agree with those values. Part of the idea behind this is, why do we have just 6 words? Well, how many of you have, aside from Barb Moore, how many of you have memorized the principles? 6 words is a little easier to memorize. And in the Commission report, they go into a little bit more depth about what they imagine these words mean. For example, the word transformation. This is what the Commission says. Transformation. We adapt to a changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian Universalist heritages, never complete, never perfect. Transformation. Another one, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. One, you'll notice some very familiar language, inherent dignity and worthiness. All right, this whole grow and spiritually transform, very similar language. You'll also notice the covenant, very intentional in there, giving us some direction on what to do, right? What we declare, what we covenant to do with it. What we believe, what we vision, what we want to do with it. The language has changed a little bit. The graphic has changed a little bit. And the core, that core is still there. That same core that was there in 1961 when the Unitarians and the Universalists came together and came up with 6 principles that were a little rooted in patriarchy and were a little rooted in Judeo-Christian faith. That core is still there. The core that was in the 7 principles as they are today, that is still there. That core of unconditional love. That core of understanding that we are all connected. That core to, as our reading said, to see no stranger. To practice unending compassion, to open our tent to all, to love our neighbor, to take in the orphan, to live without limit, to love without limit. In this diagram, they try to suggest that core of love, by putting it literally in the center. And I'm going to be frank with you, folks, I don't like that. I don't like the word love in this, and let me tell you why. Love has lost its meaning, the word. It has become a poor container for what we believe, for what we all hold in common. It is thrown around so casually that it has lost its impact. I like better that core of what that reading spoke to this morning. That idea that to see everything and everyone and to say, I am that. That idea of Ubuntu, I am because you are, of you are my other me. That comes so much closer to what the core of our faith is, of what it calls us to do. All of these are noble and good attempts to try and name the center of our faith, what we believe in. And the thing about all of these words is that they are a painting and not the pipe itself. Because they're words. In seminary, I was told that theology is an action, not a belief. And I know there are going to be grammarians and English folks here who are going to want to talk to me after service about how that is an incorrect statement. And the truth of the sentiment, the truth of that sentence is that we can argue the semantics and the words, but they are telling us what we need to embody. It's never been about the words. We are not a people of words. It is about what we do. So when someone asks you, what do you use believe? I would suggest you tell them you can't answer that question. Because our faith, belief is different among all of our members. Truly, we may be called snowflakes, and in a way they're right, because no two of us believe the same. However, we do all have the hope. We have the hope of a world that could be. We are the people who see the sacred and recognize it in each other. We see the possibility of that global community, and we realize that if we could get others to see it, that we could create something better. And in fact, truly, we believe that there is no other. We are one. Yes, as Unitarian Universalists, we love our words. But we need to remember that they are to be used to call us to our best selves and are not an end in and of themselves. No, we do not believe the same. But we do not need to in order to live into our best selves and to create the world that we all deserve. May it be so. So please join me in body and spirit as we sing our final hymn. This is a fun one. Don't be afraid to clap. We are building a new way. Don't be afraid to love. Don't be afraid to love fiercely. Don't be afraid to live into that global community. And don't stop when you don't get the love back. There is divine in everyone all around us. It is not about the words. It is about the center. May we hold it. May it be so.